In this little video, I will show you differences between data frames, Tibbles, and other types of data frames. So a data frame is an incredibly useful tool because this is the closest that we have in R to a representation of Excel spreadsheet. Each column can contain different data types, and we use data frames all the time, all over the place, to represent our data and to process our data. So data frames are really, really important. Now, data frames unfortunately have a couple of inconsistencies and problems. And to alleviate these problems, people have extended the data frame class to accommodate a more logical and uniform behavior. So let us take a look at exactly what that is. Unfortunately, you need to understand both data frames and those other types of representation, those data frame-like objects. I'll share my screen and let us create a very simple data frame, which contains only 3 rows. We call it DF, and it will be a data frame with a column called ID, which is numeric, 1 to 3. And then with a column name, which contains vectors, vector of letters A, B, and C. If you take a look at DF, DF has now 2 columns, ID and name, and then 1, 2, 3, and ABC. We will also include row names. DF will be small letters, 1, 2, 3, so A, B, C, but small. So you can see those row names here on the left side of the ID column. Okay, so as you know from matrices, we can select 1 row or 1 column of a matrix. Likewise, we can select 1 row or 1 column of a data frame. Let's select the first row of the data frame. What we are getting here is not a vector like we were having in a matrix. Instead, we are getting a little data frame. Why? Because different columns can contain different types of values. It's a different behavior than in case of a matrix, which is always of one type. Either it's integer or character or whatever else, but you always have columns of the same data type. Data frames can contain different data types. So if we select 1 column of a data frame, say we select the first column, we will get a vector because this vector can only have 1 data type. Each column has to have 1 data type. All the values in the first column are numeric. However, in case of a row, this is not true because the first value in a row is numeric, the second is character. So we cannot create a vector from that without converting it to a particular data type, but then we would be changing the data. We don't want to do that. This is why when those two lines here, line 6 and 7 in my script, they produce very different behavior. What's worse, if you are selecting the first 2 columns, you are not getting any vectors, obviously. You are getting a data frame. So depending on how many columns you are selecting, you're getting either a vector or a data frame. But sometimes you don't really know how many columns you are selecting in your program. For example, you are selecting all the columns that start with an ID. In one data frame, you might have only 1 ID column, and then you will getting a vector. Or in another data frame, you might have ID1, ID2. So you have 2 different columns and you're getting a data frame. You don't know what to expect. This is bad. This is bad, and this causes problems all the time. And this is why in tidyverse, we have the so-called Tibbles. Let us create a Tibble. First, I'll load the tidyverse library. And then I create a Tibble simply by copying line 2 here and changing data frame to Tibble. So now DF is a Tibble, and you can see it's a slightly different representation than before because the table is a bit more fancy. It also shows us the type of the column here in the second line, and shows us a comment showing how large this table is. And if the table is very large, it will show us only a first few rows and first few columns. So it's much more convenient to display. But the main or the other important difference is when we select one column from a table. Oh, sorry, I now selected everything by mistake. So I'm selecting now one column, and you can see we are not getting a vector anymore. We are getting a table. So table behavior is more consistent. There is also another important difference between table and data frames. When we try to set row names of df to say letters 1 to 3, 1 to 3, come on, then we get a warning message. Setting row names on a table is deprecated. And if we take a look at that, we do not have the row names. So operating on tables and functions that, for example, take a data frame and produce a table, or functions like read TSV from the tidyverse that read a particular data file and create a table out of it, they do not contain row names. So how do you select if you don't have row names? What if you wanted to select by row name? Well, it's better to put the row names in a separate column and use this column to select the data. This is a different topic. Now, one more important message. I don't need this example anymore. The important message is, whenever you want to use a data frame, it might as well be a table, because table is a data frame. It has the class of data frame. So if you have a program that works on data frames and doesn't know anything about tables, it will still work. Except that there's two little differences. Row names don't always work. And second, if you select one column and one column only, you're getting a table and not a vector. For some programs, this might be a problem, but usually it will not be a major issue. So you can replace, you can always use a table, and it's usually the safer thing to do. Unfortunately, there's one more problem. The authors of Tibble were not the only ones who found the original data frames from R to be problematic. So there exist many solutions to that particular problem. For us in bioinformatics, there is one. There is one area in which these problems are pretty common. The Bioconductor universe contains a different implementation of data frames, and they are not compatible with Tibbles. They are backwards compatible with data frames, just like Tibbles are backwards compatible with data frames. But in order to process them with the tools from the tidyverse, like filter and select and all that stuff, you have first to convert them to a regular data frame, then to convert them or implicitly convert them to a table. So just that you are aware, there are many different ways of representing data frames, and unfortunately, you will have to deal with that in your work.